Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone for joining. As you are aware, today is our last training session, but of course, it's not going to be the last meetings that you will be having amongst yourselves, and in some cases, myself joining. And so, because today's session would include the training, and then after the training, there will be some housekeeping issues we need to discuss. We would like to quickly go into the session. I'm sure that Christina would give opportunity for people to share their thoughts, to do a recap of what we have gone through so far. And then that will settle all of us, including those who couldn't make it for the second training session. So on this note, I'll hand over to Christina, and thanks again for giving us another wonderful music today. Please take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel, and hello to all of you. I hope you are doing well and staying safe. So let me share my screen here and launch us into today, which is going to turn our focus from understanding these digital technologies, the myths, what the employers, what big tech companies want us to believe. And we looked at that in the first session and picked out, well, this is not really the case, although they are really trying to push that agenda in your countries and regions. We then looked at, what is important to learn about these technologies. So we had the data, understanding how data is being extracted from us all the time, what this means, what effect it can have on you as citizens, your brothers and sisters, but also how they then take all of this data and create these profiles, right? And these profiles affect you, affect people you will never even meet in your life, affect people who are not even born yet. And how this whole extraction of data is really a fundamental threat to our human rights. And then we looked at algorithms and we sort of tried to understand how they work, and understanding that if we know there's a digital tool out there being used, what should be some of our critical questions. But today we're going to turn our focus inwards. We're going to look at how can we tap into the potentials of digital technologies, because they are there, right? These potentials, we could use them as unions, as workers, but do that responsibly. How should we maybe look at what we're already doing? Maybe what are some of the more simple changes we can make that can make our unions function better and make us better equipped to support our members? So that's what it's going to be about today. We will have lots and lots and lots to do and discuss. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So we're first going to be talking a little bit about what we learned last time. I'm going to open the floor to hear from you and hear if you have any questions or thoughts or things that you've been thinking about. We're then going to look at the data protection situation. If you recall from last time, we looked at how rather weak in many of the African countries the data protection regulations are. So what could we do? What could we be striving for as unions in improving our members' data rights? But also, how could we be lobbying our governments to actually improve their data protection regulations? We're then going to spend quite a lot of time looking at what I call tech for good. How could we use technology to empower our members and to break what I call the monopolization of truth? And what I mean by that is right now it is the companies, the countries, the employers who have the data, who are turning this data into information and knowledge and then spitting out, so to speak, these narratives. It is their version of reality we all are subject to. And how can we fight back? How can we table our versions, our stories the workers' stories, how can we make sure they are heard? And then we're going to be looking very quickly at these algorithmic systems. What can we do to be involved there? And 2 other policy areas under the people plan before we wrap up and open the floor to discussions of any questions from the 3 workshops, and also how can you move forward as a network. As usual, we will be having breaks in between. And to remind you all that all of the material here that supports everything that I've been saying, that will be made available to you in English, in French, and in Arabic, so that you have that and you can use the videos which will be online, the slides, and that training material to go home to your unions and start discussing or teaching forward, or really using that to spread the knowledge about these digital tools. So as I said, you know, last time was a really technical, difficult session, but I loved your questions and your engagement. And with the data stuff, you know, this is where we discovered that no matter really what we do, data is being extracted from us, whether we use our mobile phones, whether we pay with a credit card. You know, all of this data is being somehow used by these companies, used to figure out who they think we are, what we like, you know, what type of person are we. And this then is, of course, being used to create these profiles, these inferences. It's like putting us in multiple boxes. You know, oh, you're the type of person you like to run. Let's send you advertisements on sports gear. Or you're a type of person, you're not really active, but you're politically engaged. How can we manipulate your points of views? So really think about, this is not just about advertisements that you see in your news feed or when you Google something. This is also very much about how they can manipulate your thoughts and your opinions. Remember, it's not just what you do, which is valuable to them. It's everything you don't do. Now, of course, we can't hide what we don't do, but we can be aware of the fact that you know, if we use free Wi-Fi, you know, there's nothing called free anything. If you are using a free Wi-Fi, or if your comrades, they go to McDonald's or somewhere else to log on to the internet, everything they're doing, everything they're searching for, every website they're looking at is being analyzed and so on. So, you know, really use this to say, how can we protect our privacy? What demand should we have to our governments around much safer internet access? And then in the end of the day, and this is really important, data is often spoken about as the new oil, right? But this is an industry narrative. They want you to believe that, oh, okay, if we sell more of our data, we'll earn more money, right? Or if we gather more of our data, we can sell it and get rich. And this is, of course, you can hear that wrong, right? We don't want to sell our privacy. Our privacy should never be up for sale. We should instead see data in a power perspective. Those who have the data are the ones who are manipulating what people think is reality, truth. This is the monopolization of truth. If the employers have the data and they are saying, well, you are slow, Fred, you should work quicker, how can we counterbalance that? How can we prove that actually this is not the case? So data is power. Never use or accept the metaphor that it is oil. We then looked at these algorithms, right? These computer-coded mathematical systems that are at the basis of all digital technologies. We learned that they were like a recipe. This is the best way we can describe algorithms. You know, the data is the ingredients. So the tomatoes, the onions, the garlic, the salt and the pepper, that's the data. The better the data, the better quality the data, the better the outcome. You know, of course, if you use lovely, ripe, yummy tomatoes, your soup is going to taste better. The same with the data. So really remember that data is like a recipe you get in a recipe book. or that your grandma taught you, you know, this is how you make bread or the soup or whatever. So if the data, if the ingredients are rotten, you know, if your tomatoes are rotten, your soup is going to taste awful. And the same here with the algorithms. If the data is unrepresentative, if it is biased, if it is full of discrimination, if it is data from the United States or China or Germany or wherever, and it's deployed in Kenya, you know, will this data be representative of you? So what we talk about there is garbage in, garbage out. You know, what is bad going into the system will be bad going out of the system. And one of the things that you are subject to in your regions is experimentation. A hell of a lot of companies from China, from America predominantly, but also elsewhere, are testing some of their systems on you in Africa. It is absolutely unethical what is happening. But they are really exploiting the fact that you have very little data protection, plus that they want desperately access to your data. They realize that their data sets are predominantly from white people, or from the case of China, from Chinese people. They need the African, the Arab characteristics, the person and the data. So they are very, very keen on exploiting you. And when the systems are introduced into your regions, they're not adapted to your cultures, to your religions, to your history, to your, you know, notions of what is good. How should we work together? What makes a good colleague, for example? So this is where we talk about the digital colonialism, you know, where the norms and values and ethics of other regions are being forced upon you in this way, where you have little choice because you don't have the data protection. So this is really important, right? So if you hear of a public service who's using a digital technology, the first question would be to ask who developed it? Where's it from? Has it been adapted to our culture and so forth? And then we looked at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and really remember that there's this bad habit that calling everything digital artificial intelligence, and this is wrong. We shouldn't slip into that. But, you know, AI systems are these big ecosystems, infrastructures of complex connections between data, algorithms, the machine learning, the self-learning, mathematical calculations. So this is what we went through last time. And the reason why we did that is so we can understand sort of, you know, my hope is that when you hear of a digital technology, you sort of start questioning, where's the data from? Who designed this? If it's a public service deploying this technology, who actually owns the data? What can this mean for our rights, our protection as unionists, as workers, and all of that? So it's a hope that it will trigger some questions in you. Now, regarding the harms, not many people like to talk about harms. You hear governments talking about we should make audits of these systems or impact assessments. They're looking at the impacts. They don't want to use the word harm. And I think we as the progressive movement, we should really be talking about the harms. Because, you know, if a system is discriminative, if, let's take a predictive policing, you know, surveillance technology, which is used to find out or predict whether you are likely to commit a crime. Well, many of these systems are not trained on understanding African culture or Arab culture. They might take something that is a total normality for you to do and misunderstand that as an act of violence or aggression or whatever. So we have to look at the harms that these systems can have. In the world of work, a lot of these harms, and we've heard that from Amazon warehouses and from other places, the intensity of work is going up and up and up. Workers have to produce more, quicker, in shorter amounts of time. Or reversely, they are being told to work longer hours. The pace of work is going up all over the place. the discrimination and bias. We've already spoken about that. Who is prioritized and who is harmed? Are there particular groups inside of particular citizen groups inside your countries who are not receiving the opportunities, but on the other hand, are receiving all of the bad sides of these algorithms? Of course, this mental health, issues, the stress that's happening, this opaqueness, this insecurity. If your boss is an app, all of this that is leading to, of course, more and more distrust, discomfort. The mental health, the physical health of our brothers and sisters is under threat. We also have the threat of de-skilling. If let's take the Amazon warehouse situation again, where an algorithm, has a laser light and points to where the worker should pick the next item that's to be packed to a customer. Now, this removes the autonomy, the self-evaluation, the professionalism of the worker. The worker is just treated as a commodity. Do this, do this, do this, and have no opinion or no self guidance yourself. The automation effect is also, of course, creating job losses. Now, especially in your region where we have massive numbers of young people who are reaching the age of entering into the labor market, how do we balance that job loss with these growing number of people wanting and willing to work? The lower wages, as global supply and value chains are changing because of digitalization. Where does this leave you in your regions? How can you keep pushing for better wages where there's an oversupply of labor, where the jobs are being cut? This is a really serious problem. And this is where I would urge you to demand from your brothers and sisters in Europe, in North America, in Japan, and all of the countries that have companies higher up the supply chain, is you need to fight on our behalf as well. We need decent wages throughout the value and the supply chains. But this whole digitalization is removing from many, many groups of workers our autonomy, right? And our dignity. If you are controlled by an app, like there was a case in India of street cleaners, and they had to wear this GPS tracker on them that tracked whether they stayed exactly online in this road, on that street, doing what they're supposed to do. If they strayed 2 meters off track, they were immediately penalized on their wages. This is not a work with dignity and respect. And then, of course, all of this data extraction is putting great pressures and threats to our human rights and our privacy rights. So really remember these potential harms. Not all of them will happen, but we must think that technology is not born good. It is not necessarily born evil either. It is how the public service or a private company chooses to deploy these technologies that can have an impact on whether this is a technology which benefits the workers or harms the workers. So with that little recap, I'm going to open the floor now and ask if any of you have any observations or thoughts that you would like to share with the rest of us. So stop sharing here so I can see all of you.
Yes, Christina, can I come in here?
Yeah, absolutely, Daniel.
I think today I'm breaking the protocol. I'm the moderator, but I think I have a few thoughts.
Yeah, go for it.
Right. Thank you very much. So I want to share like 3 issues here. The first one is, I moved from home into a workspace, a shared working space here in the city. And this space has a lot of tech guys. So after the last session, I went to one of them, spoke with him and said, look, if you do your apps and people download, are you the one who keep the data? He says, yes. And I asked him, do you sell to companies? He says, well, so far, no one has approached me to ask me to sell these data to him or her, but he knows that there are what we call data brokers who broker deals between tech experts and companies who need these data. I just thought that this is one of the issues that I'm sure maybe in the process people should, or we all should have in mind, that these guys are also just around the corner. The second point is data issues and the state. So last week it was in the news that, you know, during COVID-19 and the need to do contact tracing, the government of Ghana issued a legislative instrument, and it required that two companies, MTN and Vodafone, should submit the data of all the subscribers to the government through a private company called Kelny GVG. Christina, if you remember in our survey, I mentioned the company called Kelny GVG. Yes, so someone took the government to court, and I think in the constitution, there's what we in our constitution, there's what we call permissible limitation clause. And the person, a lawyer, who indicated that the government, the president does not have the right to issue that statement or to issue that legislative instrument, and also to have access to our data, because it breaches what our constitution describes as what we call permissible clause. I think that this one state, goes to, into the whole issue about regulations. So the point here is that even if there are no regulations, there could be constitutions that ensures that rights and privacy of individuals and workers are not breached by state or private companies. The third point I want to raise is a company called Nso Group that is is a cyber spy company from Israel.
Oh, yeah.
What they are doing is that they are working with a lot of national governments, especially authoritarian governments, and they are using this software to spy on citizens. And here, all they need to do is to get you to upload or to download an app, and then through that, they can get access to your SMS. And here, in this case, WhatsApp is also very vulnerable to this particular software. So the state is also applying every means possible to spy on citizens. So I just thought that these, some of the issues that I came into contact with, and I felt that I should share with my colleagues here. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful examples. Let me just reflect a little bit on them. So how good of you, I mean, really, to go in and talk to this app developer, because the very fact that he has the data puts him into a position where he can, firstly, I don't know what the app was, but firstly, of course, he will know the locations of the users, what type of people they are. Maybe when you registered to use the app, you had to put your name, your address, your phone number, for example. And that he didn't say no, that he wouldn't sell the data. Right, he hadn't done it yet, but he was open to it. And
he made a statement. Let me tell you. He says that if an app is free, it means your data is the product.
Yes.
Thank you.
Exactly. But this is what we spoke about. There's nothing called a free lunch, right? There's nothing. Free Wi-Fi is not free. You are paying with your data, with your personal activities on your device or on whatever you're looking at on the internet. So this is a brilliant example of it, right? Now, the case in Ghana against the location tracking services, this is pertinent. A lot of governments across the world have got access. This is like from South Korea to this example, to many places in Latin America, and I assume other places in Africa and the Arab countries as well. They have got access to very, very personal data from the citizens. Where they are, when they are there, who they are together with, who they see, how often they see them, when do they sleep, when are they awake, all of these things that a government should not know about. So I'm very, very happy, Daniel, that this case was raised. But don't forget, not only should the government not have this, but nor should that private company. They shouldn't have access to this data either, right? Because it's everything you do or have done that they suddenly have access to. And it's so sad, because there's lots of other good examples of much more privacy preserving contact tracing apps out there that these governments could have used. So hooray for the people who raised this and to the courts who judged against the government. Your third example on the Pegasus, the Israeli company, this is deadly serious. It has been used to, it was formally designed, and this is where you see is technology good or bad. It was formally designed to track terrorists. It has now been used by governments, but also by private companies to hack into, as Daniel was saying, activists, unionists, politicians, private communications. It is one very good reason why we should not use WhatsApp, because the other tools I've been talking about, Signal or Telegram, have not been hacked by this tool. So thank you, Daniel, for sharing those great observations, which just go to show that we have to be on our toes here. Right, I want to see, does anybody else have anything they would like to share, or any thoughts, or do you have any questions maybe from the last sessions?
There's Winnie, there's
Christina?
George.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Winnie first and then George.
Okay, hi everyone, good to see you again. And just as Daniel has shared, a week, I think last week or the last week before, when we had our second workshop, something happened. A hacker hacked into our electoral commission and stole data for around 61,000 Kenyans. He stole their IDs and, like personal information that you use when you register. And it was like a syndicate. But do you know what the commission said 2 days later? That nothing like that ever happened. And we were shocked, because clearly from this workshop, what I have learned is that our governments don't want to be accountable. Who holds them accountable when such a thing as this happens, when someone steals your identity and they go ahead to log into your M-Pesa, they call you, you just say, yes, that is my date of birth. You think that it is someone from Safaricom calling you. And they steal your money. As you know, with M-Pesa, it's like liquid money, and they steal everything. And just like that, everything is gone. So it got me thinking, yes, we have that data law that protects us, but as citizens, do we really understand what is this data protection? To what extent are we able to question the government that how safe is our data when you collect? I remember when we were doing census in 2019, most of the people who came to our house, people would say, I don't own a car, I don't have any plot. There's some information we will keep off, because you will ask yourself, if the government knows I have 10 acres of land back at the village, they'll come and say, land rates, I don't know, taxes, and no, I'm not. So the information that we gave was false information. But why is this happening? Because the government is not transparent with us. So as citizens, we feel like we cannot also be honest with the government. There's that, you just feel like, no, that will be too much information. The government will be after me. No, that one I can do. So we keep off. But then you find that with all these laws that are in place, unfortunately in Kenya, there's an article I just read in the middle of the week that these companies do sell our data to, third party. So yes, you write, they write for you there, like privacy terms and conditions, but most of us, we don't even read those things. Sometimes it's just too complicated. Let me just agree, and you move on. So I think for us here in Kenya, the best way to approach this, based on what I have learned from the workshop, will be, as much as we are educating members, but also our citizens, the public need to know. The unions need to embrace that and educate the public. We need to make our governments accountable. It is very scary. Someone steals your data, and 2 days later, the commission says that now nothing, like your data is safe, but that is not an assurance. How sure are we that the data is safe with the government. We don't trust it anymore because we don't even, I don't understand what that data law says, because it's just, sometimes it's just too complicated that you don't get it. And unfortunately, with African governments, when someone from European country comes, or, you know, from America, and they say, this is what we can do and blah, 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 the president or people advising him, they are quick to sell our country, you know, like sell it. And they're like, yeah, it is going to bring more jobs. We've been told of all these false hopes. But in the end, it is our youth who are suffering.
Yes.
The mental health issues, people are being addicted. Gambling is one of the key things that is affecting the youth here in Kenya. And you can gamble with as little as 20 Kenya shillings. That is less than $1. So you see, you just go to your M-Pesa and it is not good. How safe is your data? The moment you just gamble the first from company A, you receive another SMS from company B. And
Winnie, your time is up. Sorry.
Okay, so I'll stop there.
Right.
Okay, now Winnie, let me just reflect before I give the floor to George. Absolutely wonderful reflections, and I think if you can start a movement in Kenya where you educate the union members, the citizens, but also everything you said there, could you write an opinion piece in a national newspaper? Could you ask your government, what are you doing? Could you, and here I'm looking at Daniel, you know, should we connect them with the Tech Hive Advisory and say, you know, give us help in actually finding out, you know, what is the Kenyan data protection here? What rights do we have? I think the mistrust that you're talking about, Winnie, in your government is well-founded, but also it's not, we can't continue like that, right? If we got to somehow find a way to hold our governments accountable. And I think what you self said, Winnie, is to educate the people would be good. Another thing I have, and that is that we know a lot of African and Arab citizens go to these free Wi-Fi hotspots to have access to the internet. You know, could this be something that the unions actually worked on, is creating privacy preserving free Wi-Fi hotspots? You know, would this be a way for the unions also to grow in awareness and so on? It's just an idea. Okay, George, up to you, but thank you, Winnie, for sharing.
Thanks so much, Christine. Winnie said some good things that I shared earlier on also, but there's two things that really came to me, and I'm grateful that I was able to attend this workshop. Because there are things that are happening that we overlook, but they are very serious. And the first thing that I started to really observe of late is, since the workshop, the fact that Facebook is able, or Messenger is able to suggest friends to me. Yeah. I now start to see, how do they know that I'm supposed to know these people? Yeah. And then I realized these are people who sometimes maybe we attended a workshop together and we exchange phone numbers, or maybe we communicated on WhatsApp and kind of thing like that. And Messenger is now telling me these are people you may know. So this is what they are making me to know. So what else are they doing with my data that they are not allowing me to know? That is a very, strong thing that started to come to my mind of late. The next thing I come to realize is, whenever I use my phone to take a photo, the photo comes with the geographical location of where I am and I took the photo. So why? And then every time I try to use certain apps, they will ask me for access to my camera. Yeah. Why are they doing all of this to us in a way? And I think this is very serious, and we all need to take it serious as it takes. And because if we don't take this thing seriously, some days we'll fall into problems unbeknown to ourselves. And that was something that I picked up. I only started to get so sensitive and very cautious since I came into the workshop. And I want to thank you, Daniel and PSR, for all of this.
Wow. Wonderful reflection, George. And on the friend, you're so right. It's very sharp of you to connect Well, why do they recommend this person as a friend? And how is that connected to what else am I seeing or not seeing on Facebook? What news articles are being shown on your news feed? You know, all of that is, there's no deliberate, I mean, there's no coincidence there. It is all algorithmically controlled. It especially, if you look at the news, some of it is fake news. We don't know, right? But if you look at that, it's a way to affect your opinion, either to make you confirm that, yes, I should vote on this person, or to sway you to vote on somebody else. So just as much as they know that, or suggest you should be friends with this person, they're also suggesting that you should have this or that opinion, right? So absolutely wonderful observations, George. And I'm really grateful that you can see some of the value of being part of this sort of digital rights organizer network. One of the things we can do, and I'm going to leave this, I'm just going to mention it now, and then we can revert to that in the next months and couple of years where we'll be working together. But I have on my phone something called a VPN, so a virtual private network. It's a way of accessing the internet where it's a little bit more secure. And this particular VPN allows me to change my location. So 1 minute or one day I might be in Denmark, the next day I'm in Kenya, the next day I'm in Moscow, the next day, but it also blocks a lot of those trackers. So little pieces of computer code that get put on our phones or our iPads or whatever we have when we access the internet. On average, this system blocks between 18,000 and 20,000 trackers a month. So this really shows the degree of exploitation of us from our phones and mobile devices. But the thing is, we don't have a choice, really. I mean, yes, we can do what I do, have a VPN system on there, but we need our cell phones now, right? We need access to the internet. And again, here, you know, the lack of government funding in your regions, in your countries, has meant that the space has been left wide open for the likes of Facebook and the rest of them to build your mobile technologies against them keeping forever your data. So it is really an issue. It's a big issue, but it's good we are aware of this, that we don't just blindly log on to free networks, that we really think about what are we eventually paying with, and that's our privacy. Great reflections. There's some problem. Sorry, I can just see there's some problems with the French interpretation. So
yeah, it's okay now.
Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah. Right, Daniel. Yeah.
Samira.
مرحبا. شكرا كريستينا، شكرا دانيال لهاي المعلومات المهمة اللي بتزودونا فيها. بصراحة من لحظة ما انتهت الورشة السابقة وأنا بعيد يعني التفكير وبعض المفاهيم اللي كانت مغلوطة عندي في الرقمنة بدورها بكل حمايتنا من السلبيات اللي إحنا بنواجهها، وخصوصا في مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي. وإحنا كل يوم قدام برامج جديدة، يعني في اللي هو جوالات أو هواتف جديدة بتقنيات عالية، وكل يوم قدامنا برامج جديدة. ما بننتبهش لشو مساوئ هذه البرامج، ولا بنعرف شو مردودها في سرقة بياناتنا والاعتداء على خصوصيتنا والأمور هذه كله. يمكن إحنا يعني بواجهنا بغزة خصوصا إنه هاي الإشي مهم جدا إن إحنا نوقف عنده، مش بس في غزة، بكل فلسطين، إنه سرقة بياناتنا بتخلينا عرضة لكل الانتهاكات السياسية اللي بتكون بحقنا كمواطنين.
Leads eventually to the violation of our political rights and our freedoms and exercising pressures over us from different groups. So we must be knowledgeable about these issues. Lately, we have seen a wide wave of stealing the bank accounts of many Palestinians. There are groups who are tracking persons and stealing their personal information in order to steal their bank accounts. And this have impacted many individuals in Palestine. And especially in Gaza, where these types of hacking are happening. So the lack of data protection might result in the stealing of the money and the wealth of persons. One of the dangerous concerns also that I have with respect to digitalization is this element of data protection. In the future, yes, we know that digitalization is inevitable. It is our future. And it facilitates communication, especially under the current circumstances of pandemics and maybe under other circumstances that might arise in the future. The COVID-19 pandemic made us reconsider other things that we've taken for granted in the past. During and post COVID-19 is different from pre-COVID-19 era. So now we're seeing robots used to provide people with services. We've seen China using robots in order to vaccinate people against COVID-19. So the concerns that we might or that we have are similar to the concerns that we had during the globalization era. During the globalization era, we were concerned about the loss of jobs and the loss of networking, the loss of relationships as they were in the past. But now with the digitalization era, we have more concerns with respect to the loss of jobs. Many might lose their jobs to computers or to robots in the future. So it would be very important to anticipate these concerns and work on them. Also, we've worked with PSI on empowering women's organizational capacities in labor unions. So how can we benefit from global digitalization in advocacy campaigns, in women empowerment activities? Because now we don't have the ability to meet face to face. We do have the ability to file petitions, yes, but we need to have digital aspects to our advocacy, to our lobbying, so that we do have better gender equality and better gender rights. Thank you very much, Christina, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Samira. Lots of very important points. I can see there's a general trend here, right? And you share that with your brothers and sisters all over the world. We need to inform our members. We need to inform the public about how, we have to be careful. When we get the public demand, our governments will have to change. Now, in relation to some of the issues you raised, Samira, for example, how in your women's network could you use technology to be able to communicate, organize, and be safe? Here, I can only underline firmly, please do not use WhatsApp. We can move very easily to other more safe systems that can hold you connected, allow you to have group calls, allow you to send messages protected. And this is not just for the women's group, it's all of you who should do that. In relation to the hacking of bank accounts, this was also mentioned by a sister before. That is happening all over the world, that the hijacking of public service data, but also bank accounts and identities. It is very advanced hackers, many of them, unfortunately, from Russia, but they are really targeting this and hijacking and blackmailing governments because of it. Again, this has to be a citizen demand that they learn to better safeguard our data. And then let's remember, we as unions should too. You have some data, maybe it's written in a notebook, maybe it's on a computer, but you have information about your members as well. Their names, their addresses, where they work. So we must as well, every time you point a finger at somebody, you've got three pointing at yourself. We have to remember, and I'll come back to that later today, to really protect and have some good principles of data governance ourselves. Okay. Daniel, do we have other speakers who would like to take the floor? Wegden, you've written something here in the chat. Would you like to talk us through what you wrote?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Who is speaking?
I think we're done.
Hello.
We're done.
Yeah.
She's Wegdan from Egypt, our colleague. وجدان تسمعيني؟
Wigdon.
Wajdan, can you hear us?
She's not hearing us, Christina.
No, okay. We'll come back to that later. All right. Well, listen, brothers and sisters. Germain, do you want to speak or would you?
Oui, allô?
Yeah.
Oui. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Good morning. Hello.
Bonjour.
Hello. Can you hear me? He's
Oui.
asking.
Oui,
Yeah.
bien sûr.
Ouais, je voulais illustrer un petit exemple.
May I share a small thing that I experienced with regard to data?
Une connaissance à moi dans le téléphone.
I had
Son compte a été piraté.
somebody that I know in my telephone. His account was hacked. And a hacker who sent me a word and explaining things to me as the person himself. He was asking me to give him some money. So I asked the person to which number. What is the number that I should be sending the money to via Orange Money? Then he told me, you're going to see the name that is going to appear. Then I asked the person, you can't actually know your name again. And then I understood there that a hacker has hacked the data of a person that I know. So I told the person, I cannot send the money. I told the person that you are a ruffian, you are not normal, you are a thief. And then the person, off his telephone.
Okay, Mama,
Sometimes later, the person, the real person, told me that his accounts had been hacked. So we are no longer sure about our data. As you were saying it, protection of our data is problematic for us. So I just wanted to share this bit of example with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shama. And another brilliant example.
Well,
hackers will, or your friends will never ask you on a text message to give them money. They will phone you. If they are friends, they will phone you and say, listen, I'm in trouble, my bank account or my bank app isn't working and I need to pay. If you get any links in email or on text message saying, click here, a prize is waiting for you, or click here, I'm in trouble. All of that is malware, is stuff that you should never do. If you receive a message because your friend's phone or email has been hacked, and you receive a message and you can see the spelling is wrong or they're using a different language, the best thing to do is, like you did, Shama, is to contact them and say, phone them really so you can hear their voice and say, did you just send me this message because it seems a bit off? We cannot be careful enough. So I think it's a wonderful example, and thank you for sharing that. Super. Right, I'm just going to see, I think we're going to move on now. Thank you for sharing it. all of the examples you've given me have really illustrated how well you can see how interconnected all of these things are, and how, you know, not necessarily with the best of intentions, these technologies are offered to us. You know, I keep going back to Daniel's example of the app developer in his building. This app developer is probably a really nice person. He doesn't want to do evil, but he also wants to make a living. And if a data broker, so these are the companies who buy and sell data, approaches this app developer and says, you know, you can earn 1,000 more money a week or a month by selling this data, you know, can you blame him if he says yes? But I think, you know, Daniel having this conversation with him might make him sort of say, well, what safeguards can he put in place around not selling personal and protected data? So great examples, all of them. I'm going to hurry on here and really sort of kick off now our discussions about what can we do as unions to break this situation where we have very few rights. And the first thing we have to do is look at our data rights. And really, I think all of you here on this call, in the countries that have weaker data protections, you know, work with privacy organizations, NGOs, whoever, and urge your governments to update their data protection laws. Because this is very important to safeguard you, right? And I'm not going to go into so much detail here. You can read about the data lifecycle at work in the training material you'll be getting. But this is something I have formed as a way that we, in collective bargaining or in discussions with employers or even the state around legislation, where should we improve the workers' rights to their data? Now, imagine this as a circle, even though it's a line, and it covers everything from how data is collected by an employer, how they analyze it, where they store this data. You know, they might say we store it on the cloud. Where is this cloud? You know, it's not just up there, it is on a server somewhere. And then do they sell the data or do they delete it? What do they do with it? So this is called the data lifecycle at work. And of course, if we, you know, think about some of the examples you've been giving this morning or today, it's like, well, we should know what data sources do they have? Where are they collecting data from? Are they scraping our social media profiles to find out what type of a person am I if they're considering hiring me for a job? You know, should they have the right to look at my Facebook flow or my Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, Instagram, whatever you use? Shouldn't the employer, if they do stuff like this, or if they get data from other data sets, or if they buy them off the black market or whatever, shouldn't we as the unions have the right to know what sources are these data? And shouldn't we also have a right to say, listen, you don't need to know about somebody's private life to find out whether they'll be a good worker here in the company? You know, we should be able to know and then put red lines down. What can they and can they not do? In the next phase, the data analysis phase, this is where these inferences, this profiling takes place. It can also be that they take an Excel sheet or mathematical sheet and they're just doing simple calculations. What time do people come to work? When do they leave? You know, how many hours have they been at work? But they can also do these more elaborate calculations using algorithms and AI. They might be judging are female nurses more trusted than male nurses, or they might find out that young nurses are more productive in the mornings than in the evenings. You know, all sorts of these things, this profiling. Now, in the data protection regulations in Africa, but also to a certain extent, even in Europe, which seems to have the sort of the model data protection regulation, we know very little about these inferences, and we have very few rights to know about them. So if we take the example before about with your Facebook friends, why are you recommended on Facebook to connect with this person and that person? That's because of these inferences. There's some algorithms which do matching like this, match you with other people, like dating apps do that as well, right? But Facebook does it too. Now, this inferences, you know, why are you being subject to them? Why are you getting this news article and not that one? And we should have a right to know, how have they profiled us? And we should have a right to edit that profile, to block it, to change it, or simply say delete, right? So in our companies, in our workplaces, we should really know, how are the employers or the owners of the tools that they're using, how are they profiling us? We should have a right to edit that. We should have a right to have those profiles deleted. And then the third phase, and this might sound a little bit boring compared to the others, but we should ask leadership, we should ask the employers, where exactly are you storing our data? For how long are you storing it? Who has access to that data? Now, this might sound a little bit fuzzy, but Daniel Oberko again is doing amazing work on trade agreements. And here you will, you know, he can tell you far more about some of the current discussions in trade circles are to guarantee the free flow of data across the world. Meaning that your data, from having you Daniel working in this co-working space where you are now, that can be bought and sold within milliseconds and land in the hands of somebody living in Panama, or an organization or company in Haiti. You know, we should have the right to say, no, our data should be stored and held and be a benefit for the people of our country, our region. But this will be forbidden if these trade discussions around digital trade, if they ever materialize. So this is important. We should ask our employers, where is it stored? Let's say a server is in Moscow. This would mean that your data would be subject to the Moscow data protection, or lack of the same. So this is important. And then to the fourth point, which is very related to everything you have been discussing here this morning, is what happens then, not only to the raw data, but also to these profiles. Are they sold? Are they given away? Are they moved to a sister, public service in another part of the country? The thing right now is, across the world, unions don't have answers to this. Could somebody put themselves on mute, please? The person called Galaxy Grand Prime Pro, please go on mute. It's a bit noisy in my ear. So we should know, of course, where is this data sold to? Shouldn't we have the right to say we will not accept that it is sold to, the police or sold to an American company? We should have certain rights over where this data is sold and to whom. Now, this is easier said than done. Daniel Oberko mentioned before data brokers. These are firms with mysterious names. Very many of them fly under the radar. We don't really know who they are, but they buy and sell data on others' behalf. I think we can learn from one of the unions in Ireland, in Europe. They negotiated in a collective agreement that the company obliged and agreed to not sell any data that included workers' personal data or personally identifiable information. So anything that could help somebody find out that was you or you or you. This is brilliant. This is an excellent collective agreement clause, which I think we should really consider. Should we be negotiating for that? This is a great way to protect our members and our own privacy. So that's the data life cycle at work. These 4 phases is something that you in time really can work on and try and figure out around the data collection. How could we negotiate for stronger rights around that? Now, this one here depicts a road. It's a journey, and it's a journey towards where could we go from here. So this is a dream slide. In some parts of the world, this dream is not reality yet, but is unions or governments are thinking about it. But it's about how can we actually then not only secure for our members that they have much stronger data protection, but also that we should move a little step further. And PSI has done work on this with the Indian researchers from IT for Change around the economic rights to data, and the economic rights in the abstract way that we per definition should own the data that is ours. Now, if we think that thought through, and it's still very abstract also in my mind, but let's say in the workplace, all the data that the company or the employer is taking from the workers should per definition also be the workers. Now, if we imagine if we could find ways to get that data or from other sources to really collect workers' data and to take care of it, have security around it, good principles of protecting it, then we could start to break this monopolization of truth. I want to give you a good example. In the United States, there's a group of workers called shoppers. And these are workers who get their job from a digital app. And the app is, like if I'm the customer, I'm at home, I don't want to go shopping. So I connect to a shopper, give them my shopping list. The shopper will then go out and shop and deliver to my door. Now, the platform who controls these shoppers went out in the press nationwide and said, we have advanced our algorithm, and the pay that the shoppers will get now will be much more fair, and the tips will be more transparent, and so on. So a young tech activist that I work with, who's an absolute star, he was thinking this sounds too good to be true. So he wrote some machine learning code and asked the shoppers, the workers, to take a screenshot of their pay slips and send to him. So he got thousands of these screenshots and could, via his digital tool, find out that this was not true. They were not paid fairly and equally. 41% of all of the workers were paid consistently less than they were before this new pay algorithm. And this then, when the figures were in place, this then hit the media. And out it was in all of the newspaper and on the news, and suddenly the platform were on their back feet and had to apologize. But, had Dan not had that idea, had he not collected and done all that work, the truth out there would have been that this algorithm is fair. And then he could prove that for 41% of the workers, it was certainly not fair. And luckily then the algorithm was changed. So this is a great way. How can we, by collecting our members' data gradually and in time and have it as a dream out there, really learn to analyze that and then break the monopolization of truth? Okay, I'm going to see we've been working now for just over an hour. And I'm just going to stop and check if there's anybody who has any questions. Then we're going to have a short break. So does anybody have any questions about these data rights issues? Penny, do I see you? No, that was my own hand. Anybody with a question? I shouldn't have said that we'll go on a break because you're all being quiet now. Ines, do you have?
مرحبا جميعا.
Welcome everyone.
هيدي ثالث جلسة يعني
This is the third workshop that I've assisted in, and I've been waiting to reach the workshop related to the syndicate. You were talking about the importance of data protection and data ownership and how to advocate for the proper data collection, data analysis, and data storage related to the employees. But this requires first that the syndicates should be capable to do this. Second, the environment. We are living in a region where our governments are exercising all types of pressure over us. The right to organize in the public sector is not granted for most of the countries in our region. This is the first point. So we need to have a democratic environment, transparency and accountability to be able to achieve this. The journey ahead of us is very, very difficult and filled with obstacles. I, of course, keep optimistic, and I know that PSI is working on the support of syndicates and the empowerment of syndicates. And now this is a necessity more than ever in order to become able to maneuver this digital world. We need strong syndicates that are able to engage in collective bargaining, in a societal dialogue, in collective contracts, so that we are able to ensure that the data collected on the employees are owned by the employees and are protected properly. This requires a huge effort, and we need more freedoms in our countries in order to be able to achieve this. We are not able in our countries to hold a member of parliament accountable. I am from Lebanon. I am from Beirut, and I work in the PSI office, and I am a program coordinator in PSI for Middle East and North Africa. The Beirut explosion that happened in Beirut hasn't been investigated properly. Until now, we couldn't lift the immunity over one member of parliament to hold him accountable for some of the aspects of the crime that happened in the Beirut port. So now it is important more than ever to empower the syndicates, to increase the level of affiliation and membership to our syndicates, and also to boost youth's affiliation and membership and adherence to our syndicates. Also, the syndicate structure should be more democratic, should be independent from political parties and from employers. All of these can be drivers to enable us to negotiate with the employers, with the companies, and with the government at equal footings first, and also to be able to make them convinced that we represent a huge or a wide number and segment of employees, and make them convinced that we are partners in this and not rivals. This requires a huge effort, and hopefully we will be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shanaz, and really my heart goes out to the situation in Beirut and in Lebanon, but to all of you as well who have very difficult political situations you're operating in. You know, we could have a long talk about what you could do. I realize that negotiating for these things in your environment is still a stretch away. You know, maybe with some of the first things, you know, we saw the activism, we saw the civil society solidarity in the Beirut port after this big explosion. You know, maybe a first way would be to create some discussion groups, you know, to sit there on a street corner, advertise on Tuesday, we're going to be talking about data or, you know, digital rights or something. There's so many good efforts going on, and organizations. I know that UNESCO has been quite heavily involved in Lebanon too. UNESCO, they've just adopted new artificial intelligence policies. You know, maybe hook up with them, hook up with the ILO, and create some kind of a citizen debate situation. You know, there's various steps that I understand still you know, you have to be careful, but that can lay the ground for all the other things you're talking about democratic, open, politically free unions and so forth. So listen, there's no easy path to any of this, right? It is a new struggle. This is the modern day's new struggle for the trade unions, on top of everything else that we have to struggle and fight for. I totally realize this, but maybe, Mother Teresa, she said, oh no, it wasn't Mother Teresa, it was, was it Gandhi, I think, who said, be the change you expect in others. So, let's start with ourselves. And if we can start that conversation like we're having in this wonderful group here of, oh, I've learned this, I've learned that. Next time you're sitting with your family, next time you're sitting with a couple of union members, talk to them about, be careful using Facebook and what you put out there and so on. So we start slowly building up, building up, building up. But my deepest respect and hopes and dreams for you in your particular situation. So I think I'm going to call for a little bit. We're going to turn our attention to how can we, as the unions, actually tap into the potentials of digital technologies. We have learned that a lot of the apps and services out there, they are actually, dangerous in the sense that if we haven't read the small print, as one of you commented on in the comments, then we don't know what's happening with our data. But there's also apps out there which are really privacy preserving, who don't sell the data, who encrypt the information. And this is why one of the reasons, big reasons why that we should be moving away from WhatsApp to Signal or Telegram. But there's also other things. So let's jump into it and have a look at what we could be doing. The first one here is really stop using what I call tech for bad. And tech for bad is WhatsApp. WhatsApp will really harm your organizing efforts, will harm your, the women's network you were talking about before, but also any and all forms of union activism or organizing. I'm not necessarily saying it will, but the potential of WhatsApp actually not being good and supportive of your course is huge. I sent today to Daniel and to the other PSI coordinators several guides on how you can move your activities from WhatsApp to these better alternatives, Signal or Telegram. Now, this will take some time, right? Because your members as well have to download Signal or Telegram, but it can be done. And for me, this would be an important, a really important first step, especially because some of you live in regions where being a union person also has a potential threat of physical harm or even your life. So really take this seriously, brothers and sisters, and we and the PSI, we're happy to help you along the way in transferring your contacts, giving you the information how you can do that, and so on. So this is a really, really good way to continue having this access and communication means with your members, with your colleagues, but doing it safely. The double encryption that is in, for example, Signal, that I know very well, protects against any external hacking or government decision to get access to your data. So this is going to be a really important step. And I want to pause here and ask, is this something you think that you would be able to do or after this course, would like help in doing? So I'm going to stop sharing so I better can see if any of you have any thoughts around this transition or any questions right now to me around that.
Christina?
Yes, Winnie.
If I can go on. I think this is something that as a union we can do, but I have to be prepared psychologically because there'll be some resistance, and some people will not be ready to transition immediately. And there's this belief that when you insist why people should use Signal or Telegram, guys will be like, have you been paid by those guys
Yeah.
to, you know, advertise them?
Yeah.
So I really have to be prepared psychologically, but I
Yeah.
think I can take my chances. I downloaded Signal and I only have one friend. I've tried telling my other colleagues to embrace Signal, but you can see people are still skeptical because they are so used to WhatsApp that when you
Yeah.
tell them about privacy and they're still like, nah,
Yeah.
we'll move when the time comes. But
Yeah.
I think I'm positive we can do this,
Yeah.
though with some resistance, but I'm positive.
Wow, Winnie, again, thank you really for taking those first steps. And what you actually are portraying here, right, is a union campaign. This is how do we build a really good campaign? So you're identifying there'll be some skepticism, there might be some criticism. So how do we, in our campaign material, so, you know, why do we want to move to Signal or Telegram? How do we already cater for those counter questions? So you could write, no, this is not, we're not paid or influenced by these systems, but we have investigated the market. And you can see here in this article and in this article that they are much better, more privacy preserving, and we have to safeguard our privacy. And, you know, so you're building a campaign, and this is not going to happen overnight, as you so rightly say, Winnie, right? You first need to talk to your colleagues. It's important that the union is on board before you then start transiting your union groups, your members as well. So this is building a union campaign like we have built campaigns throughout our history. Really first finding out, do we have the why? Why should we do this? How should we do this? What are the benefits? Are there any hidden agendas? No, and here's the proof. So a really, really good example, and really thanks for sharing your experiences so far. But hurry up slowly in that, in the sense that make sure you have, you know, the articles that link to the privacy, and I shared them with Daniel today. He can share them forward. Sorry, there's somebody else who would like to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Yeah, Jerry, please.
Yes, without gross exaggeration, I think that it's going to be a very Herculean task for unions, particularly in Ghana, because I've not seen any union that has a policy on data protection. And, you know, the union is said that it's a political organization, and some of these things should be underpinned by policy. So I wanted to find out if you can share with us any policy with probably some of the unions that have a policy on, data protection, and how we are able to carry along members on this new proposal, where we have to move from WhatsApp, Facebook to a more secure, a more friendly platform that will not steal and sell our data. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. That's a great question. So there's a little difference between data protection and then, you know, being proactive, safeguarding your privacy. So, you know, many unions who have data protection guidelines, that's more about how the union itself is protecting the members' data. So that's one thing. The other thing is, how can we be activists in demanding or seeking more privacy preserving tools? For example, in this case, Signal or Telegram. So it's slightly two different things, but I can tell you that the International Labour Organization, the ILO, as part of the United Nations, they no longer are allowed to use WhatsApp. All of the staff all over the world have been asked to move to Signal. So, you know, it's about being proactive, safeguarding your privacy and those of your comrades and friends and family. And then as the union, having data protection policies and strategies in place. They're related, but they're also a little bit different. But, you know, I'm going to ask Daniel Oberko to keep a note on your request, Because I think, again, that as this network, if you reassemble again in the future, which I know you will, this would be a brilliant topic to put on the agenda. How do we move? How have we created the awareness amongst our members? And then the understanding why we should stop using WhatsApp first and foremost. So that would be a brilliant topic to come back to, and also create some of that material, right, of the arguments. Why should we do this? Do we have any stakes or interest in Signal or Telegram? You could almost co-create together here a question and answer document. I think that would be really, really good. So thanks, Jerry, for sharing those thoughts as well. Would anybody else like to? Okay, I have a comment here. If the government can shut down all networks for the people not to be able to communicate or use technological ways for daily use, are the people safe? Next question, what is protecting the people's privacy if the state can access at any time? Now, Nondomiso, these are excellent questions. And this is where you in your region particularly are facing this government sort of mishandling of this situation, the authoritarian crackdown on the internet, or crackdown on digital technologies, but also then crackdown on your privacy rights. Now, I cannot sit here and say you can trust your governments, because I know many of you can't. But that's, that they shut down the means of communication. You can't really do anything about that unless, you're a very rich union and you have access to satellite communication or other means, right? So in that sense, the situation is really tough. On the question if the government has access to your data at any time, here our sisters comment from before of how the government electoral information from the citizens had been hacked, and how the government wouldn't take responsibility for this. The only way I can say that we can kind of protect our data is really starting again with ourselves. Be careful when using free Wi-Fi or free apps. Be careful what information you put out there. Really think about when you sign up for an app and they ask for your phone number. Do they really need that? If they ask for your email to confirm that it's you who's applying for access to this app, maybe all of you should create, an extra email, a free one on Hotmail or Gmail or whatever, called subscriptions, and then your name or something. Just to do that, so they don't get access to your work email or your real private email. So there's small steps that we can take, being very considerate about what Wi-Fi systems we use, what information we put out there. And, in your circumstances where you have governments who can be extremely authoritative in all of this, this is maybe some of the first and important steps that you should take.
We have Sharif and Jumana. Sharif and Jumana, and then later George.
Yeah.
مساء الخير عليكم. شكرا جزيلا كريستينا.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Christina, for this valuable information. Thanks also to PSI and to all the colleagues who helped in the organization of these workshops. I would like to emphasize on what Shahinaz mentioned, and we need to make a list of all these violations, like the violations happened on WhatsApp, and to provide evidence that we can use later and disseminate to our colleagues and our comrades, so that they do not think that we are attacking WhatsApp. So these evidence will be very, very, very important for us to defend our cause. The second point is that we can provide a list of questions and short answers to to the colleagues so that we can quickly provide them with the short answers and, for example, what might happen and how can we avoid these things. For example, if they have a question about using free Wi-Fi, we can tell them simply they can create a random email address for the registration. So we can prepare this list, this simple list, and we disseminate it later to our colleagues to protect themselves, particularly in the Arab and the African regions, because our governments here, they are spying and they are spying on the citizens, and many governments they are dealing with these companies for reasons of advertisement and so on and so forth. However, these companies they are making espionage, they are spying on the different entities in these regions. Therefore, we need short questions and short answers on the safe software, the safe tools that we can use to protect our data, and how we can use the internet, how can we switch on and off our devices, things like this, in order to facilitate the dissemination of information and also to distribute it to the largest extent possible to our networks. And probably we can think also about a short session that we make a PowerPoint presentation in several languages with your assistance, for example, or and we display this presentation to the different colleagues on how to use these online tools and digital tools in order to provide our colleagues and our networks with deeper and more extensive answers. Thank you again.
Wow, Sharif, wonderful, wonderful suggestions, really. And I'm looking now at Daniel. I hope you're taking notes here, because they were 3 really, really good ideas, which you in this network here can work on. So finding out what are the arguments for why we shouldn't use WhatsApp in this case. You know, what are the arguments for transiting to another tool? You know, the Q&A thing we were talking about. And then finding ways to share this information, to have the debate in your unions and with your members. 3 very, very important points, which I think, you know, this network of you wonderful people, and I'm happy to assist, Daniel is happy to assist PSI in doing this. So really, you know, brothers and sisters, you know, this won't happen overnight, right? We have time to really get this right, and to help each other find the evidence, the arguments, and so on. So really, you know, we're planting a little seed. I'm planting a seed in your head here, and you're already picking up on it. And let's really hurry up slowly so we get this right. But I so appreciate your comment, Sharif. Thank you. And then it was who next, Daniel? I can't remember.
Jumana.
Jumana.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Hi, Javan, hi.
How are you, Christina, today?
Thank you.
I would like to suggest something about the Swift from WhatsApp to other apps. Well, as a matter of fact, I think that if we approach this as just a habit, you know, we are used, you know, we are used to use WhatsApp. That's all about it, you know, as we used to use the old phones. You know, now we are using smartphones. That's about it. This, you know, this is one. As a point 2, I'd say that I don't know. I'm just a suggestion. Can let's say PSI or our unions set a policy that not to use WhatsApp? So this is my question.
Yeah, thank you, Joanna, and nice to connect. I think having a policy where you say to your members they cannot use WhatsApp would be a little bit off. You know, there's a freedom of you know, people have a right to use what they should use. but the union could have a policy of saying to the members, we want to protect your information, we want it to be safe to be a union member, and therefore we are using these.
Yes,
these
exactly.
tools.
Yeah.
So prohibiting people is not a good way.
I didn't mean by prohibiting.
No, okay,
I
great.
meant,
Yeah,
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, Joanna, it's good. Yes, it's totally right to see using these tools as a habit. And habits can be addictive, right? I mean, like I'm one of these awful people who smoke cigarettes, right? And I'm addicted to this. This is a habit. And breaking habits is hard work, right? It really is hard work. I know logically that I shouldn't smoke, that it's bad for my health, but I still find it hard to stop. And the same with WhatsApp, because it's a habit. And therefore, I think that the suggestions you all have made here around what do we need to do to make that transition easier, as easy as possible, as effortless as possible, the better. So yeah, it's a good reminder to think of this as a habit.
Alrighty, thanks.
And then I think it was George, or who was next, Daniel?
George.
George.
So thank you. On the question of how do we transit from WhatsApp, and if it is possible, I think yes, it is possible. And I do not overlook the fact that it's going to be challenging, but I think if we do a good campaign where we make education the hallmark and get more and more people, influential people in our unions and in our sightings to understand the underlying factors, I'm sure we can win. Yeah. So taking simple things like how come they are recommending friends to you, how did they generate that? And we now know that WhatsApp has been bought by Facebook. And so what is on WhatsApp now is also going to come over to Facebook managers, and they will do the same thing. Those kinds of things are convincing. And with these articles that you talk about coming up, I'm sure when we do a good campaign, we can win. Yeah. And I'm very glad that my union is talking about going to convention. And I think I will really want to take the time to introduce this to our union in the convention, so that because we have a lot of little platforms on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, so we can see if this can come to our discussion for our union to adapt the usage of either Telegram or Signal as an official a communication tool. And once that passes, I'm sure everybody else will start to follow up in my union. So thank you again, and that's what I think we can do.
Yeah, that's great, George. Yeah, I'm just thinking of something Sharif said before, which I want to again, Daniel. Let's put a remember tick there. And I think it was Sharif who suggested we could do a video, with me, maybe some other people who are experts on this, about what is it with WhatsApp that we should be careful with. And I know several people who would be brilliant to have in a short video like this, and that won't be difficult to make, and you could have subtitles in your languages. So let's really put a remember mark on that one, and that would fit in, George, as well with what you're saying, and the rest of you around having the material, the arguments to do this. Wonderful. Great. So before I move on, I know from some of the other regions that one thing that some of the unions was asking is how can we create better databases or overviews of who are our members, their names, their addresses, where they work, their wage levels or whatever. And this has been a discussion I had yesterday in the Latin American group, is, how do we create in Excel, Microsoft Excel or Google spreadsheet, how can we start there by structuring our member database? Some of you might have it on notebooks or, on pieces of paper. But this would be also something that, you know, by putting passwords on those Excel sheets or spreadsheets, you know, making sure you have policies in place who in the office can access this sheet. This is also a really good way of making sure that you have, you know, up-to-date contact details on your members, their phone numbers. If they change, you can quickly go in and edit them and so on. So this is also, you know, using tech. Okay, it's big text technology, spreadsheets or Google Sheets, but we can password protect them and other ways of really just getting a good structure to who your members are. So that's also a great little thing to do. So let me hurry on here. I just really, as well, my slides are loading, want to thank you all for your engagement in these issues and for sharing. And I really look forward to seeing how this group, how you evolve together and help one another. You know, in the future, if you try, Georges, to mention this in your convention, you know, if it works, what really worked, what arguments did you use, please share that with this group so others don't have to reinvent the argument. So we really can help each other. Nobody else is helping the union movement. You know, private companies, they have all the money in the world, right? Big tech, even more money than the rest of us can dream of. We need to help each other through sharing our knowledge. And this, I'm sure through this network, you really can do. So another thing, and this is something about how do we get the data? So this is what I call, you know, breaking this monopolization of truth. And what some of you might not know about me is that I'm also involved in developing technology. And doing that in a way that it's for workers, it's by the workers, and it puts privacy at its very, very core. And one of the tools that we developed is called WeClock. And it has its own website, and you see that here, www.weclock.it. And this is a tool of kind of giving work a reality check. Now, we know that workers are working many hours. We know that wage theft is one of the biggest crimes against workers across the world. We know that, you know, physical working conditions are very hard. Psychological ones can be very hard. We also, you know, lack the data. We lack the proof. We have maybe members coming to us saying, you know, I'm working 60, 70 hours a week. And this is true, but how do we prove it? How do we go back to management or go to the press or go to the governments and say, listen, something is really bad here. Something is going on and we can prove this. So I worked with a bunch of tech activists who are experts in privacy preserving ways to develop a tool that we all can use. It has very low data usage. It works on all platforms, so Android and Apple. It's on the App Store and the Play Store. It doesn't require that you actually are on the internet. You can just have the thing in your pocket. And then when you get to a Wi-Fi spot, you can share the data. Now, what is key, before I go into what WeClock actually does, what is key about it here is it is only the worker who has the app on his or her phone who has access to the data. Nobody else has, not we as the developers, not any backdoor private companies. It is the worker and the worker only. And that person can then choose to share it with their organizer, with their union, or they can choose to delete it. But this is the key thing, which is different from 99% of all other apps out there. There is no backdoor to data storage, no access even from the developer side to the data. So remembering that WeClock is aimed to give work a reality check, what can it do? So for example, we know that working time is increasing. We know that many workers are asked to do double shifts or asked to work late one evening in public health, for example, then come back early in the next morning. So one of the things it can do is track your location. Now, the way WeClock works is it taps into, and you might remember I mentioned this last time, the 14 sensors in a cell phone. There's 14 different sensors in here. And we go in and we tap into those sensors and get the information. So when you install WeClock on your phone, you're asked to put in your home address and your work address. If you have one, you're not working from home or working by yourself. And then, of course, it knows if you then run WeClock, it knows when you leave home and go to work. It knows exactly what time you got to your work location. It also knows when you then leave. So this is a good example of very easily finding a way where I was at work in my work location for 13 hours today, or for 9 hours, or how many minutes. So this is, you know, for example, a really good way to prove what are your working hours? How long are you at work for? But it also is a way, and for young people, especially in the big cities, this is a growing problem, that it takes them a long time to commute to work. You know, maybe they're sitting in a train or a bus for over an hour and a quarter each way. Well, really, you know, let's try and find out how long are they taking commuting. So again, when it leaves home and you get to work, you can measure the commute time. But it also knows, because your phone knows whether you're moving or sitting still, it also knows how much you are moving during the day. Now, for your colleagues who are on their feet all day, so again, let's take the nurses, for example, or take any other type of worker who is really standing up or walking around, do they ever get any breaks? Now, we know breaks are needed for our health, right? But we also know that a lot of workers don't get their breaks. By having WeClock on you, we can see, and if you look at the graph there on the left, the green one, there were certain times during the day where I didn't really move all that much. Well, this would be an indication of me actually having a break. Conversely, us who sit down and are office workers, do we ever get up and move around? We know it's extremely bad for the health to sit down all day. And this would give us a good indication, you know, are we moving enough? Do we get up? Do we have the breaks where we can stretch or go and have lunch or get a coffee or whatever? Now, on the Android version, because there's a difference between Apple and Android, what we also did there was add a function where you could go in onto your phone and say, well, this app is a work app, so I want that to be logged, how often I use it or open it. Gmail is my work email thing. Slack is a work communication tool. So you can go in and set which apps on your phone are work apps. And then it logs when and for how long do you use them, when during the day. Now, if you look at that middle graph, this is again my data, but look at what time I was actually using both Outlook, that's email, and Twitter, 4 a.m. in the morning. Why was I sending emails at 4 a.m. in the morning? Now, this is just my data, but imagine you had collected data, you had run what we call a WeClock campaign for a week. Let's say your members in this workplace are complaining of always on cultures, managers sending emails in the middle of the night or whatever. Then you could take my data and all the other data and combine them and say, wow, we have a general pattern here. People seem to be not sleeping very well. They're getting up, they're sending emails. You know, dear manager, we have a work environment here which is not good for the workers. Can you see how we, by aggregating this data, can begin to see some patterns, right? But you can also see, you know, is a boss particularly, you know, bad at sending emails late in the evening, demanding an answer? So you can see here that actually after 5 p.m., I didn't work on any work apps. So that was a good day. Some days I did. But there you really get an indication of not what you wrote or anything, but when you were using these apps. And then the graph on the right here is called location and distance. This one tells you again where you are. Now, you can zoom in because it's so precise that it can tell you if you're in supermarket shopping, what aisle you took up and down in the supermarket. Now that's, just for fun, but let's say this is a work situation. We had a case in the United States in a hospital where the young doctors, they were only by law allowed to work in certain departments in the hospital. But when you had week clock on them, they could actually show how many hours they were spending per week working in the areas they were by law not allowed to work. So this was a really good, again, campaign the union could drive to protect the young doctors from being forced to deal with patients that they were not trained to deal with, for example. But this could also be home care workers. So workers who are sent out there in the community to help patients and to help clients. Some of them might be told, well, you'll be paid for 10 kilometers of travel. But using week clock, we could prove, well, actually I'm traveling 26 kilometers, but you're not paying my petrol for 26 kilometers. You see, so we can really turn this information into something which is showing what are the workers' realities, and then using that either for a public campaign or for having a conversation with the employer, or talking to politicians about if you did this across your labor market, stress levels or working time hours and so forth. So this is a really, really powerful way for us to get information about the modern reality of work, and then using that to not only inform us about, wow, these are the conditions of work. For example, if a worker used a week clock for a week, you could see, well, how long from they left work till they are back at work. Does this give them 7 hours of rest? Or 7 hours of break, or are they already back at work 4 hours later? This, of course, is not sustainable for the health of the individual worker. But if that's a pattern, then there is really a scheduling problem in this workplace. So on WeClock's website, we've a document here that sort of shows how you could use this, some examples from how it has been used by other unions, campaigns you could be running. Now, this could be something that you run, on a small group of workers. And, you just compare the screenshots every day and say, okay, we seem to have a pattern here. It could be something you do in your union. What is our union staff reality? Or when you get really used to this, this is something you can do for your members on a larger scale. But you could also just use this yourself as a way for you to keep a little bit of taps on, am I moving enough, or am I working long hours or whatnot? So I would really like you, remembering that it can be used responsibly. There's no data snooping here, but I would really like you now to go into some breakout groups and then think of what is some of your members' sort of worries or concerns or problems right now. Could you run a campaign with the workers where you used WeClock to solve that, or to prove to management that something is wrong? Just to give you some ideas, we had another example in a country where the workers had to go through security X-ray shields when they went into work and when they left work. And this was to ensure they didn't bring anything into work that they shouldn't, and they hadn't stolen anything from work and were taking it out. But the workers complained it took them between 30 minutes and 40 minutes to walk through this system because there was always a long queue. But they were not paid for that time. But it still meant they had to leave home that much earlier to have enough time so they were in the factory at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we ran a WeClock study on this and could prove how long it actually took. And then the union went to the managers and said, listen, you need another X-ray system or 4 more, because this is not a fair use of the workers' time. Or you have to compensate them for this time and pay them for it. And that actually changed the employer's way of looking at this. Another example we had, and this might make you laugh, but it was a real one. We had a film crew. So those camera people and makeup people who were on set shooting a movie. And this set is huge. You can imagine there has to be, you know, long roads and buildings and all of this. And then the toilets on the set were so far away from where the majority of workers were that it took them, let's say they had a 10-minute break, it took them 5 minutes to walk down to the toilet. So the whole break was just going down to the toilet, being on the toilet, and then walking back to the set. They didn't really have a break. And we could prove this again using WeClock. So management was addressed and the toilets were moved closer to where the workers were. You know, a really low-key example. So I would love for Daniel now to put those links to the various groups in the chat and then send you out into breakouts. It's 2 o'clock now, so you're going to have quite short time. We're going to say 15 minutes to really think about what is, you know, some of the troubles and challenges your members are facing, and how then could you use these, use WeClock to help them. So there are the links. If you all open your language link first, and then Daniel will send you out into the breakout groups per language. So before you go to the breakout, open the French one if you're French speaking, the English one if you're English speaking, the Arabic one if you're Arabic speaking, and then Daniel will send you into the groups. Are you ready for that, Daniel?
Yes. So give me like 2 minutes and I'll put everyone in a group.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've got 2 minutes more. So now we could do the exercise bit, right? Now we could get the arms going and the head going and the shoulders going. But yeah, so really whilst Daniel's putting you into the groups there, really kind of think about, are they having wage theft problems? So they don't feel they're being paid for the hours they're working. Are they working too much? Do they feel that they are stressed or whatever? So really start thinking about any issues. And then when we come back, I will help you find out whether WeClock or another tool could be helpful for you in that sense.
Okay, so we are ready.
Okay, so off you send people, and then
right.
We'll see you back here in 15 minutes, but Daniel will call you back. He wrote something in the chat and I'll answer that afterwards. Now, I was wondering whether any of you would like to share the discussions you had. Focus on the problems that your workers are facing, and then we'll see whether WeClock or anything else could be helpful towards that. I would like to invite somebody from the Arabic speaking group to take the floor. So would one of you like to share with us? And you know, it can also be that you were stuck or you didn't know how to do this. So would one of you like to take the floor?
شريف أو جويرية أو حدا إذا بدهم يحكوا.
شريف or جويرية.
شريف
أيوة نعم.
شريف.
حدا من المجموعة عم تطلب.
Christina is asking Sharif, Juwairia, or Samira, as you wish. Good afternoon, everyone. During the discussion, we've tackled many points. I will try to be brief and identify what issues and problems that WeClock might be useful in. So first of all, the injuries that might happen to the workers when they go or come back from their works. So as you know, injuries on the way to work are not compensated by the employers. The employers deny providing compensation for injuries happening to workers or employees when they go or come back from work. So when we request employers to compensate that, they deny that. So maybe WeClock can be a way to prove the distance and the location of the worker, and can support us in providing proof or argument that the worker has actually been on the way to work or coming back, and he has been or she has been injured then. The second point or problems that we've talked about is the tasks that workers are tasked to complete within their work, and that might go beyond the supposed time for such a task. So some workers might spend more time than it is allocated by the employer to fulfill the task. And the extra time is usually not recognized by the employers. So here, week clock might be used in order to prove that the task took 2 hours rather than 1 hour, and that the employer merits to be paid for the 2 hours and not just for 1 hour. Also, we see many of the female workers be subject to harassment by maybe a head of a department or a head of the unit. Here, usually the women workers are summoned by the head of the departments or the head of the units to their offices, and they are together alone, and sometimes they do harass these women workers. So week clock might actually prove that the worker has been or has moved from her office to the office of the head of the department or of the officer in charge of her, and this might work as an intimidation tool for those who actually attempt to harass or do harass women workers. So this is something that could be useful. Also, sometimes some of the female workers might have children that they put in the kindergartens that are near the companies. And these female workers might resort to go to these kindergartens in order to breastfeed their children or their babies. And here, many of the times, the employers do actually say that the workers waste time when they go to breastfeed their babies. So week clock might be also used as a tool in order to prove that the time hasn't been wasted. Thank you very much. If I may, can I add something from the same group?
Sure.
كمان الويك لوك له علاقة باللي هو دوام
Maybe week clock can be used as a tool to measure the shifts of the workers. We know that there are many of the electronic clock in and clock out tools that are used in the companies. And many of the companies do actually impose sanctions on workers if they do arrive late. So maybe week clock might be used in order to prove why these workers came late, or if they came late or not. Also, week clock can be a tool to help workers prove that they have been doing their tasks in the location assigned. Maybe also week clock can be used as a tool of improving efficiency and improving management systems and dispatching the different employees or workers in certain sectors, and especially in the health sector. And thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful case examples. Just a quick comment on them because time is running. On the injuries going to and from work, one of the developments we want to put onto WeClock is the ability to take a short video or a picture, and that automatically gets time and location stamped. So for example, if you were walking to work or biking to work or in a car and there's an accident, you know, not only do you have the exact location, you can also take a picture of that, for example. But also, of course, the commute time, how long it takes to get to work. You know, if it usually takes you 30 minutes, but today it took you 1 hour, well, then of course, then there will be an explanation for that. So having that data would absolutely help you there. On the question of tasks that take longer time, now that's difficult if they're tasks that are done on the computer, for example. But if it's tasks because you're a home care worker and a patient requires more care, so you're at that patient's home for a longer time, or if you're a water management engineer and a pump is wrong, so you're on that location for a longer amount of time, we will be able to prove that. So WeClock could work there. On the female workers and the harassment, this is a really heartbreaking reality, and WeClock will be able to show that the female worker went to the manager's office, was there for X amount of time. We have a journal function in the app where you can write down harassed again, but that doesn't really prove it. We would not want to turn on the ability to record events, because this again is privacy invading towards other colleagues or the manager, and this could put the worker into really harmful situation. So it would be an indication, but it wouldn't be proof of the actual harassment. On the one though, with the children in the kindergarten, now this would be an excellent use of WeClock. When did the female worker leave the workplace? How long did it take to go to the kindergarten? How long was she there? Did she go anywhere else? Did she go shopping on the way back, or did she go straight back to work? If she went to the kindergarten to breastfeed and went straight back, any manager who claims that she's wasting time, you there have the proof that she actually didn't. She had to do her duty as a mother. And on the shifts and the clock in time, this is another really, really good example where you could use the location. So again, when did the worker leave home? How long did it take to get to work? What time were you exactly at the work location? When did you exactly leave again? So this is a really good example as well of breaking that monopolization of truth. The employer claims you were late. Here you can prove, well, listen, it usually takes me 30 minutes to get to work. There was an accident. It took me an hour. This is beyond my control. So this would be a really good way to actually empower your members. So thank you so much, all of you, both of you, for sharing those examples. They were really, really good. I now want to see whether the French group, you were quite small. Did any of you have the chance to discuss or have some thoughts?
Yes, indeed, we're here.
Yeah, Shaman, please. Oui.
Can you hear us? Good morning, everyone. This application, WeClock, can have a positive impact for the workers. Let me take the example of the city of Douala, where I reside. With the traffic jam, you can leave your home early in the morning, but you're stuck in the jam, and you can easily spend an hour or 2 hours in the traffic jam before you get to your workplace. And when you get to the workplace, this can have a negative impact regarding your employer. But WeClock application can be useful, can help you so that the employer know the time that you leave your home. And again, another example, generally here in my country, we do have when you leave your home to the workplace, or when you leave the workplace to your home, at times you may have an accident as well. You can have an accident, and on the way you have an accident, and now with WeClock, they will know if you have some diversion. Did you go straight to the workplace, or did you go straight to your home? So I think again that WeClock can really help us to really have the proof of that. And again, for the recording. When you go to your workplace, we use the badges for the shifts. We have the magnetic badges that can open the door, and this records your time of entrance, which is this can be used to avoid the use of a lot of paperwork. Instead of having someone to fill all the logs or the records, the week clock can also be useful as a proof when you arrive at the workplace. Now, for the assignment or the task, it is true that we have very small numbers of people working in our companies nowadays. So because of that, the workers are working more than they ought to do, because we're making more effort, because a work to be done by 6 people, maybe you are 3 to do that, and you have a shift, 6-hour shift, 6 to 2, and 2 to 10 p.m., 10 p.m. to 6. These are our shifts, so we need 3 teams. So if you have the full number, you can run the normal shift. But in case you are not in full number, you have more workloads. So now, regarding the surveillance or the monitoring, this can also be helpful. Week clock can be helpful in case we have people involving harassment at the workplace, with women especially, because there are women that are victims of harassment at the workplace, on the offices. So week clock can also be helpful in terms of proof. Another example is, I must say that in our companies, you said it, for the profiling or the career profile, how are people managed in terms of career development and the career profile and development for the task to be assigned to the staff. This also takes time. So this is an application, we clock, all in all, that can be helpful in many regards to bring an added value regarding generate a positive aspect for the workers. But this needs to also to be controlled. The employer can use that for monitoring and surveillance as well. So we need to be mindful of that. All in all, I can say that this is a beneficial application for the workers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Shaman. Brilliant examples. I'm going to take the English-speaking group and then just comment on all of the examples before we have to hurry back on again. So would anybody from the English-speaking group like to share what you discussed?
We were in group 3.
Yeah, oh, you were 3 groups, great, yeah.
Yes, so what my fellow comrades and I, we discussed about the working from home model now that COVID is here with us. And there's this notion that hybrid is the new working, the new normal. So I think with this model, we can, with the week clock app, maybe we can, we can prove that, you need to check on instantly on your emails because, you are working from home, emails are coming in. Are you being compensated for data bundles? For example, the cost of electricity. This is something we might be able to prove. What about water bills? These are the things that I think using the week clock app, we can use this to prove that and have it in our argument when we are negotiating in our CBAs that these things need to be compensated. How are they going to be compensated? And another thing that we also came up with was offering the daycare services, especially to female employees. I'll use one of the biggest telco companies in Kenya, Safaricom, which has this, it has a daycare in the company. So female employees after 3 months, even if they report back to work, you are allowed to report back to work with your baby. And then you are given breaks to go and breastfeed with your baby and play a little with your baby, then come back to work. This has improved the mental stability of the mother, who is not so, she's at work and being worried, oh, has my baby eaten and all this, being over worried. But with the baby being there and there is a nurse, the company has employed a nurse to, someone to play with the baby, to keep the baby busy as the mother is playing. We find that the productivity level of this employee goes up because she knows that her welfare has been well taken care of. So she doesn't have, she's not worried. Unfortunately, with our public services, with our government ministries, I haven't seen such a model being replicated. So I thought that this is something we could use to prove that we don't have to let our female employees, leave their babies at home. It doesn't mean when they come with their babies at work, they can't be productive at work. One thing, it makes the mother to feel secure. She can work knowing that my baby is safe. And after some time, I'll go and, so those are the two examples that we came up with, and we feel that it replicates in all our respective countries. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful, Winnie. Thank you. Would anybody else from the English-speaking groups like to share? Okay, George.
Yeah. So in our group, we're in English-speaking group 1, and I think we're like 4 present. And the issues that came on as problems at places of work have to do with working more hours but being paid less. And other departments that are faced with more risky tasks, but these are not taken into consideration. So when you look at understaffing and having no nurse-patient ratio with long working hours, we were thinking, how could this be proven to policymakers so that they change their strategy or make work conditions get to be improved better. And one of the things that we thought of in this direction, we thought maybe in the event of nurse patient ratio forming, people will need to do a division of the number of clients per given period of time divided by the number of staff to see what is the ratio and those kinds of things. Not really relate this to how we use work block.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Wow, what good examples from all of you. So going back to the French group, I'm just going to zoom through this quickly. Yes, the example of traffic jams and the extended commute to work, you would be able to prove this with WeClock. On the magnetic badges, the entrance, yes, you can use WeClock to what time did you get to your work location, when did you leave? The same with the shift work, and this also relates a little bit to to the last example here from Georges. It can, of course, it knows from day to day what time you went to work, left work, what time you came back to work the day after. So it will be able to show how many hours are you spending in this workplace? How short of time or long time is there between shifts? Is this a general tendency week after week, for example? And there you will have the proof. On the harassment in the workplaces, comrades, several of you have mentioned this, and it's horrific that this is taking place. This is more difficult to prove using WeClock. You don't want to whip out the phone and take a photo if a boss is harassing a worker. This is harder. The only way we can log that at the minute in WeClock is as a journal. But, that a worker writes, I was harassed again, or boss, this and this touched me in an inappropriate way. that is hard to be regarded as proof, but it will give you as the union information that could be necessary to address the management and talk to them. On the career development, that one is a little bit harder, but of course, if a worker is not getting promotion because the boss thinks that they are late to work or something, you would have the proof that, listen, they were only late because there was traffic jams or an accident or something. On the working from home one, Winnie, and the hybrid one, and being able to prove the cost of electricity and data and all of that, that is a little bit more difficult using the sensors on a mobile phone. But what I'm thinking is that you could get the workers to take a photo of their electricity meter in the morning and a photo of it again in the evening, and say do that for a week, and then you'll have an indication when they start work and when they end work how much electricity they have used and therefore the cost of it. That could be done, but the photo proof will be essential again to turn this into proof and not just I think I have used a lot of electricity. On the daycare services, now it's difficult to prove well-being, using your cell phone. So advocating for daycare in public services is more of a campaign where I don't think WeClock will be able to help you. Other than you can say, if there's not a kindergarten, are mothers not working? That's number one. That's not a WeClock thing, but you can, statistically show that. Or number two, the mothers who are working, do they have to leave work and walk so and so far to the kindergarten or to home to breastfeed their child and then walk back again? That distance and time you could use WeClock for. The working hours, absolutely. Again, you can log that with WeClock, especially if it's work on location. It's more difficult if you're working from home, but it can be done. We're working with a Belgium union now to add a start-stop function, but that's manual and therefore prone to error, right? We forget to stop it, we forget to start it. On the nurse-patient ratio and the shifts, now this is a brilliant use of WeClock. Firstly, when does the nurse go to work? Where is she throughout the hospital or the care home during the day? How you would be able to, in another way, aggregate how many nurses were at work that day. How many hours is the nurse? How many steps is she or he taking? And all of that you could use WeClock for, absolutely. So just to wrap up, and really thank you again for being so innovative and really good examples. Of course, any technology that we use, be it an app on a phone or a wearable on your wrist or a badge or something, is risky, right? If the employers get to know about this, this could be, it could be negative for the worker. So there is a function on WeClock where you can immediately delete all the data so that the employer can't see it. But still, if you as the union run a campaign where you use the data obtained from WeClock, really be considerate to, is this a risky environment? Is management going to, what could be the potential harms again to the workers, right? That's really important. Okay, comrades, time is running, and I really want to just share a few more thoughts with you before we wrap up for today. Now, one of the things, I'm going to be skipping through some slides here, but one of the things that is so essential, as you maybe organize your membership in data, so to speak, on a spreadsheet or in a database, or if you use WeClock and your members share their data with you, you have to protect it, right? This is where we cannot do and subject ourselves to hacking or the stealing of this data or the misuse of this data. So this is really key. And to help you on the way here, we also developed a guide to good data stewardship, so to speak. I'm using sort of the Jedi symbols here. How can we become the guardians of the good, right? But it's called Lighthouse. And it is unfortunately only now in English, but I'm thinking at some point we could maybe turn to FES and see if there's an interest from your side in translating this. But you sit down and you actually go through this and you say, well, how are we taking care of the data we're getting in? Who has access to it? Have we password protected this data? Have we made sure it can't be edited or deleted by all staff, but only particular staff? And this is going to be really, really important for you as we, as well as the unions, become more digital. As we start logging membership data, we should really take that responsibility and protect the data. Very, very important. So I want to leave some time in the end here for some end reflections, and we've been joined by Daniel Bertosa from PSI's head office. So I want to open that space. So you're going to see me now skipping through some of the slides here. But you will see in the training material that there's a lot of information about governing algorithms and so on. These are, more for the future. It's stuff that you can read. But I just want to end here on sort of looking at your journey from here on, and then open the floor to any comments from you all. But you have, by really, and I wish to thank you for your participation. It has been absolutely a learning curve for me to hear of your stories and your experiences. But really, look at these slides, look at the videos. They will be put up onto PSI's website, and I'll show you that in a minute. Take those conversations with your colleagues back in the union. Whatever that really sticks from these 3 workshops that you feel comfortable in, asking them to watch the videos, then having a discussion about it. And then, as I mentioned before, this network, and I know Daniel has you already working in subgroups by language, but really, really understand that we must learn from one another. We don't have in the union movement the money to buy in expensive consultants and teach us all how to do things. If one union experiencing what worked well, what didn't, share that information. If you're engaging in any campaign or discussion with employers or governments, really help each other progress. There's no need for us to reinvent the wheel, all of us, and have the same struggles. And then use this network for sharing information. You might have read a good article or heard of something that others would enjoy. Share that in this network. And I'm sure Daniel Ubako will put together a way for you to safely connect with one another. You will be hearing from me because the next group of unions we will be training our union leaders. They will have a shorter training than you have had, but it will be important that you cooperate with your leader around this, that they as well, that you maybe talk about what you have learned here, why it would be good if they also were part of this project. We will, of course, also work with the union leaders, contact them between now and when the training starts in January. You will also be hearing from me about the material we'll be using, so input from your side around what you think the union leaders would benefit from knowing, etc., etc. We will, as a group, be meeting again for sure in November, where we'll have a short 2-hour session, just touching base, hearing if there's any developments, any questions, any new things you would like to share. Also remember, and here I'm looking at Daniel specifically, Obako, but also remember all of you, you might know of some great experts from academia or from NGOs or from civil society organizations that the rest of you could benefit from listening to. So hold a Zoom meeting like this, invite that person to come and share their ideas and also learn from you. And by doing that over the next couple of years, you will be a digital rights organizer. You've now got the training. We already have discussed lots of funky things that you could do as a group. And now it really is up to you to go ahead and do it. And with those words, I'm now going to open the floor for any comments from Daniel Oberko, from Daniel Betosa, from you. So a huge thank you from me for your amazing participation. As I said, have learned so much from you, and to our interpreters for your incredible work through these intense 3 hours. So with that, over to you, Daniel Oberko, to guide us through the last 10, 11 minutes here.
Right. Thank you very, very much, Christina, for such a very wonderful, solid 3 sessions of enlightenment, of bringing us a deeper understanding of how unions should approach the whole idea of digitalization and the whole idea surrounding data, and how we can use our collective bargaining to ensure that workers' data is protected, workers' rights are protected, and the workplace is kept safe for everyone. Just as the digital rights organizers are, I'm very much excited that we've all stayed on through and through, and I imagine that we are poised for action. One of the things I know that we've been able to do is that we have received, a very strong, I would say a strong transformation, because the kind of understanding and insight we had concerning digitalization, and a lot of them were myths. And as we discuss those myths, we have been brought to a better stage of understanding how unions should approach digitalization. I think it's been very, very good. Even though the FES is not here, I would like to thank FES so much for sponsoring these activities. They have worked with us over the years on issues of quality public services, tax, trade, and other related issues as PSI. And so far, the collaboration has spurred us on to do other great things, which includes this training on digitalization. So really appreciate them. I appreciate the staff of PSI, our supervisor, Daniel Betosa, my colleagues at the head office, my colleagues at the regional office, who have provided support at the background, helping to translate documents, helping to reach out to resource persons, helping to record and all that. Really, really, really appreciate you. Also, our regional secretary, Sani, our various sub-regional secretaries, and in fact, the project coordinators who also decided to take part of this training session. In fact, it's been very good. And we know that with you as part of this group, activities at the local level will be very, very successful. Really, really appreciate that. Before I hand over the session to Daniel Betosa for him to share a few words, I would like you to know that we've decided to put you into groups, and we had to wait for the 3rd group because we realized that some were not consistent, and we needed those who are consistent to be put in a group. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to share a link on the chat. It will lead you to the groups that we are trying to form. Your names are there, the countries are there. We need you to add your phone numbers. We also need you to help us correct if we have made any mistake in the name. So I'll put the link in the chat. So once you click it, it will lead you to a list of groups that we are trying to form for you. So kindly help us get the names right and add your phone numbers, because we are thinking about forming a Signal group or a Telegram group. We will need these phone numbers. So kindly do that for us. You should also know that on your, like I indicated in our last session, in the previous session, we agreed that we are going to hand you the certificate. So we need to ensure that the names that you appear on the certificate are right. And so kindly help us correct if we have made any mistake in the names. In terms of the ideas, we have some ideas that I'm immediately going to share with you. We'll translate those ideas and then send to the various language groups. But these are just a few ideas that we thought that you could work with as far as the groups are concerned. Just a minute. Yes. So if you can see, so since our previous meeting and even today's discussion, there are a number of things we can do as far as the group is concerned. So if you can see what I'm sharing with you, in the group, you can decide on the number of times you want to meet. You choose a coordinator amongst yourselves, where to meet, you can decide. And at the moment, I think that is good that you meet virtually. And to do what? So we can discuss and review what has been learned in the training. So one of the first things you can do is to, amongst yourselves, discuss what you have learned during this training session. You can discuss effective ways to train other union members, that is virtually or face-to-face. You can discuss how to expand your group for other unions to come in. You can draw up a national national or union plans, because if you can remember, some of the discussions we've had has been to help the union draft its own data privacy policy and all that. So that could be one of it. As far as the region is concerned, it's based on your regional and national plan, your national and union plan, that we can also fashion out a regional plan. You can gather national and regional stories and articles on digitalization and share. You can also engage on you can discuss how to engage union leaders on what you have learned. But one of the things you are required to do is to report back. And the only way to report back is to prepare your reports and take your union leaders and some of your union executives through what you have learned here. We can also decide that the 3 videos that we've had through the sessions, we can break them into smaller videos and develop a mass online learning session called MOOCs. That is an example of what we could do. So these are the things when you go into your groups, you need to be discussing. We will share this with you in all the 3 languages. You can decide that you are coming together to write an opinion piece. And for colleagues who are in Ghana, there are a number of data issues that have come up that you can come together and write an opinion piece on that. You can develop a union data protection policy. You may also want to develop arguments for we talked about transitioning from WhatsApp to Telegram or Signal. You need to develop arguments for your position, that the reason why we should transition from WhatsApp to Signal, or even transitioning from one tool to the other. All these things require that you come together and discuss. We may also want to do a video to discuss why, okay, this we've talked about. We can also talked about helping unions to protect contact details of members using passwords. We know that some of the unions are trying to put all their contact details of their members into a system. We need to ensure that these are protected through using passwords and all that. And here, those who are in unions whose union members information are still on paper, you should work at helping them, get the soft copies of those information and also help them protect them. During the week log discussion, one of the things that I realized was coming out was the use of week log to address some of the challenges we face at work. And I think that it shouldn't be limited to just the group work. So just today's work. So as you go back in your group work, keep on discussing the issue about week log, and then let's see how to fashion out some things to do. In fact, there are a number of things you can do, but this is just a skeleton of some of the ideas that could come up. So once that is done, we also expect that you would you will submit your national plan with us, because some of the national plan will require that we support you technically. Sometimes we need to organize some resource persons to support you. If you have, once you develop a plan, kindly share that with us. The certificates, yes. So we have agreed that each one of you will have your certificates. And so rest assured, you are going to have your certificate. So all these activities that you may have in mind, our hope is that by October, you should finish and then submit some reports. Then from there, would hand over your certificates to each one of you. So I think that those issues will have been addressed. Now, your data allowances, your sub-regional secretaries will reach out to you, will submit your names to them. they'll reach out to you and ensure that you get your data allowances. So I think that on the issue of materials for the training, like Christina has mentioned, they will be made available in the 3 languages and shared to all of us. And so we are in a safe place. And on this note, I'll rest my case. I'm sure other things will come up. I'll rest my case and hand over the time to Daniel Betosa. If he has some comments to make. Thank you, Daniel. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Daniel Aburko.
Hello?
Thank you very much, Daniel Aburko. Hang on, I'm getting some feedback. Just bear with me. Hang on a tick. I'll turn my translation off. Great. Thank you very much, Daniel Aburko. It's always a pleasure to share the platform with you, comrade. I really don't have a lot to add by way of content and observations because all the hard work has already been done by yourselves. So I'd like to thank all of the participants for coming here. This has been quite intense. It's difficult to do online, especially when it's new content material, but I see a lot of you have continued on and the discussion has been excellent, or at least the discussion I've heard. So thank you very much for taking the time to get yourself aware and knowledgeable to help yourself, your comrades at your own union and your fellow workers. I'd like to say some specific thanks. One, to Daniel Aburko. I think we all appreciate the work he does. He's a real asset to PSI and has been to this project, and it couldn't have happened without him. And behind him is a regional team led by Sani Baba, but with a range of other people, including, as he said, some staff from head office. And so we thank them. We thank also Christina Kolkloff, who we're very lucky to have assisting us and has put a lot of effort into these trainings, and who I'm sure we all appreciate her dedication, both to the labour cause, but also to PSI. So thank you very much, Christina. The key observations I'd like to make before we leave is that, as Daniel has said, there are so many myths out there about what digitalisation means. Powerful interests promote them, and they do it to try to convince workers that it's in their interests. And our job is to understand in whose interests digitalisation is. Sometimes it's ours, sometimes it's not. And ensure that workers also understand. And the main point about that is that we need to exercise control over these digitalisation processes. And to do that, we need to build union power. So the knowledge is part of building of the power. It's not the only part. We need to organise and spread the word. And also we need to adapt our own actions. And that's really, I think, what comes next. The work starts now. This is the first set of training for digital rights organisers. As has been mentioned, we will conduct another set of training later in the year and earlier next year for union leaders. We really want your union leaders to join. We will tailor the content to the leadership level. We want them to buy in and understand the challenges and the reasons why unions need to take this seriously. And we want them to commit to taking action to transform your unions so that they can deal with these issues more effectively and build your workers' power. So keep in touch with us. Daniel Aburko outlined the arrangements for the future groups and the mentoring sessions and the self-organizing. It's absolutely critical that continues. That's the next important step for you to take. Please let us know if we can help with anything. You've got a great resource with Daniel Aburko, but you've also got access to Christina Kolkloff, who is probably the most important and the most knowledgeable union digitalization expert in the world, and is certainly amongst a number of very experienced and well-recognized global experts. So between Daniel and Christina, if you have any questions or you want to know anything, please reach out, and PSI more broadly can help. But when we look back on this training in a year's time, the way in which we will judge our success is whether or not your unions and other unions around you have taken action to adapt to these challenges. And so we encourage you to speak to your leadership about that, We encourage you to speak to them about it, and also we will do the same at the leadership training. But what we really want to see is unions developing digitalization strategies. There's a lot to do, and unions don't have to do it all. If you just start with one or two things and make some progress and build some understanding, that's excellent. But we really do want to support you and your unions to put in place strategies that are most relevant to you and your unions, so that you can do your work. And particularly, I said, if you need anything from us, then please let us know. If you need anything from us to help you engage your leadership or develop and implement strategies in your union, we'd love to hear about that. That's the sort of work that Daniela Burko can assist with, Christina can, all of the PSI staff. The next step for us is to try and help your unions to help your members get in control of the digitalization process. So thank you very much. I appreciate you providing me with the time, and I really wish you all the success at the beginning of this very exciting process.
Thank you very much, Danny. Before we leave, I've been told that the link I sent to you is a read-only link, and so you are not able to type in your phone numbers. Do not worry, I will send the link again to you via email so that you can have access and then send your type in your phone numbers. One thing we've been doing, and we shouldn't forget, is that before we leave, we all wait, turn on our videos and take a photograph of the screen. So kindly do well and turn on your video, and let's take a photograph. In the meantime, Penny and Winnie would have to wait after the session. Thank you very much. Turn on your videos, guys.
Alors, vous avez fermé ma vidéo là-bas.
Ok.
Désactivez ma vidéo.